Today, we are joined by a person who I could best describe as a maker. Her name is Godwyn Morris. She is going to be a leader of our workshop on circuit basics, make your own operations. That's happening February 11th at the Skill Mill NYC. Thank you, Godwyn. Thank you for joining me today. Why don't you tell me about one of the specific activities you're going to be doing in the workshop at the Skill Mill?
Well, circuits are a pretty common topic. Electricity, how it conducts, how things light up. Those are pretty standard content, particularly in the fourth grade, third grade. But everybody likes lights. Why do we like Christmas lights so much? Because human brains like shiny things. So it's always fun to do a circuit workshop with kids, and obviously it teaches them about what conducts, what doesn't conduct. It used to include more with it when we had mini, and I still have mini incandescent bulbs, but nobody uses those anymore for actual projects. They just use them for conducting electricity or how does a light bulb work. But LEDs work differently than incandescents. And so that's an interesting switch that I've made over the years. Because in the beginning, we didn't have LEDs. When I started 20 years ago, we only had these cute little mini light bulbs. So we're going to explore circuits, and circuit is it's a loop. It has to be, I use this example of your fingers separated and then closing your fingers into a round loop, and that's open and closing a circuit. And so that's a pretty simple concept. I find most children understand that one pretty quickly. So in the workshop, we'll cover that, but then we'll also cover branching out, adding extra LEDs, not just going in a simple loop, what happens. And then there's parallel and serial circuits connecting different ways. Do you connect everything directly to the battery, or do you connect them all in a sequence and connect all that to a battery? So that's generally the content that people need, and the projects are unlimited. I like doing the operation game because everybody knows the concept of that, and then there's pretty simple ways to build that, and kids can go in all kinds of directions with it.
What types of resources or tools teachers are going to need to execute this workshop in their classrooms?
So as you can tell from my engineering with paper mindset, we are totally focused on what is easily accessible. The simple materials that you need, there's two ways of approaching it. One is you can just buy the supplies in bulk, which is coin cell batteries, which are, 32s? I forgot. It's CO32, I think that's what they're called. But it doesn't really matter. It's any of those little round silver batteries and LEDs. And then we use aluminum foil. There's a lot of companies sell copper tape, and then there's a couple of companies that sell what's called the nylon tape. I don't love the copper tape because it's not always conductive on both sides. So if that makes sense, if you're taping down an LED, the sticky side is going to be on the leg of the LED. Well, if that side's not conductive, then the whole thing won't work. So I prefer using foil because it's conductive, and then putting tape on top of all of that and holding it in place. There's also a nylon tape that is conductive on both sides, and that I like to use that too, but it's more expensive. So aluminum foil is easier to use, but it's a little bit on budget. Some teachers have a budget, and none of this is enormously expensive. The other reason I like the aluminum foil is that we cut it in strips and then fold it a couple of times to give it a little more stamina, is that you can place it before you tape it down. When you're using the copper tape or the nylon tape, it's already sticky, and you could lay it out before you pull the tape, the protective surface off, but kids don't. They tend to just do. So the foil, you have to tape it after you've laid it out, and so it's a little more forgiving in terms of placement and preventing the pieces from crossing so you don't short circuit it.
What grade levels work best with this type of workshop?
I would say I've done it with all ages. It depends on how much hands-on, but certainly third grade, fourth grade, and up. You can go up through high school, kindergarten, first grade. I will say, as anyone who's worked with kids knows, that it's not always the age of the kids that affects their ability to do a project. different motor skills and different attention spans. So, but generally, it's usually, I think circuits are taught in third, it's either third or fourth grade in the public school.
In this workshop, are you going to provide lesson plans?
I'm not providing lesson plans because that's not my goal. My goal is method. I'm going to teach you different ways of using the materials, and then we can talk about what lessons you're running and how you could apply this, because you can use this either as a circuit lesson or as part of a lesson about circuits, or you can use it as a lesson about something else, and this happens to be the project that you're making. So, for example, I run I have literally 500 science engineering projects that I've created that I use in my after school program. So we use a version of it's a version of the operation game when we're studying the Hudson River. And we actually make a model of, it's hard to explain it exactly, but we attach an LED to a little paper, and then we make a river, and it's attached to this base. And when the boat, which has a little foil on the bottom of it connected to the LEDs, touches the river, which is the foil, and it goes down the river, I think that makes sense, the light goes on. And so I use that when I'm teaching the Hudson River, which is such a wonderful long path from the tier in the clouds up in the mountains north of New York City, and how it travels all down. So we make this little cute light up boat model, or sometimes we make a lighthouse or something. There's things like that. So you can either use it to teach circuits, or you can use it to use a circuit project in something else you're teaching. So that is why I do not offer lesson plans.
Tell me your origin story on how you decided to become a maker. Why is being a maker important to you? Where did that come from?
So I am a hands-on maker, and that is my background. That's my experience. I do not come at this with a list of credentials. There's a category we know that category of people. There's a different category of people who are learn it as you do it, and that is me. I've been working with kids most of my life in different forms, and I'm good at observing. And I noticed years and years ago when I first started doing workshops with kids for fun, how they responded to different materials and different supplies. And so I just kept going with that. The other part about me, because I'm not a formal educator, so I didn't come from the formal education background. It came from a business background. I'm actually a serial entrepreneur. That everybody knows what that is now. Nobody knew what that was 20 years ago when I started doing that. And I started with I opened a toy store in 1990. But it wasn't just a toy store, it was a children's center. I had this idea that I wanted to have a place where I was selling toys, but I also had they were rooms. They weren't exactly classrooms. One was an art room. One was a quote unquote dance room. We called it that. It was just an empty room that we could use for a variety of activities. And then we had a playroom for younger kids. And so I designed this place to run classes and parties and other things. And it was a children's center. And so I started that, and then I realized that the after school and working with teachers was much more interesting, rewarding. And so we got rid of the retail piece of it and expanded the direct work with kids, which I did for years and years. And then teachers started to see what I was doing and said, oh, could you show me what you're doing? And then we pivoted. The other thing I have is, so besides the spaces where we run workshops and kids come for camp, and then we go to schools for after school, and then I have my engineering with paper packets. I also invented a cardboard engineering kit called Dazzlinks, and I designed it. I manufactured it at a factory in the New York area, and then we sell these bags of pieces of cardboard. They're cardboard shapes with holes in them, and you go together with the dowels and with brass fasteners. And it's open-ended. People say it's like Lego. It's only like Lego in that you can make whatever you want with it. It's made of cardboard. It's recyclable. It's very durable. It's a lot of fun to work with. It has no specific project. You make whatever you want. And so that's also aimed at teachers. Teachers are so much more fun and interesting than parents. So everything I do is for teachers. Parents don't understand. It's so interesting. Have you seen this? Parents, the difference between teachers are obviously parents, and maybe sometimes they fall into this other category, but for the most part, teachers understand the value of frustration, that things don't have to fit together perfectly the first time, and parents want happy children, no frustration, make it work. And that's why the toy industry is so focused on a finished product. You don't see a lot of creativity in the toy industry. You see a perfect finished thing. Follow these instructions, you'll get this. Even Lego. So I'm old enough to have watched Lego change over the years. And it was originally piles of bricks and make whatever you want. And it morphed pretty quickly into make this exact thing. And then luckily you wind up with a bucket of pieces again and kids do their own creative work. But it's not the norm in toys, but it's the norm in schools. And I love that. I just love here's a bunch of stuff. What do we do with it?
What are the traits of a good maker?
Flexibility, open-minded, asking open questions, not saying no to an idea, trying things. That's the beginning of my list. It's because mostly what happens is whatever you're trying to do, it's not so easy to see how to get there. You know where you want to, you know where you're starting, you have an idea of where you want to end, and how you get there isn't obvious. That's what making is about. So you have to try different things. The famous Thomas Edison, what was it, 1,000 ways the light bulb didn't work. You just have to keep trying things. And I personally hate the word failure, and I hate this culture that's revolved around, oh, you have to fail. But the word failure is the wrong. You're just trying something. It didn't work. You try something else. It's much more encouraging than the word failure. Failure to me is so finite, and that's not what happens. This didn't work. Okay, let me see. What happens if I turn it over this way? What happens if I try a different material? What happens if I talk to a few people and say, what do you think? That's another great way to figure it out. But it's all about the process and how you get to where you're trying to go. And then as we all know, sometimes that end product you thought you were going for isn't what you wind up with, because as you're going through the process, you discover that something else would be better, or it would be better in this shape, or it would be better in this size, or these materials. And that happens a lot too.